Edexcel English Language Paper 2, Section A, Question 3. Question 3 is an AO2 question, but this time the response is worth 15 marks, so you must aim for at least 3 or 4 detailed paragraphs analysing the effects on the reader of language, sentence structures, and language features. Question 3 will always be the same. Analyse how the writer uses language and structure to engage the reader. As you read through the text, underline key words, phrases, and sentences that you think may engage the reader. Remember that a text may have a number of different readers who may be engaged using different techniques. For example, Malala's revelation that there were no more school trips would directly engage teenagers who would be able to relate to the situation she is describing. Unlike in Paper 1, you will be asked to analyse the ways in which language and structure are used to engage the reader across a whole text, not just a shorter section. So what should you include in your paragraphs? For language, you should include the features used by the writer. This is where you should use your subject terminology, so identify the correct part of speech or literary device, for example, metaphor, verb, or adjective. You must support each point with a quotation. Keep it short and embed it if you can. Rather than writing, "This can be proved by the quote, 'They destroyed everything,' embed your quotation in your answer. For example, the writer uses the verb destroyed to show the reader how vicious and destructive the Taliban are. You need to discuss the effect of the language because it's not good enough to just feature spot. If you see a simile, great, but you must write about the effects of that simile to get marks for it. For example, by describing their treatment by the Taliban using the simile, "saw us as little dolls to control," the writer successfully engages the reader because they would be shocked by the way the girls are being treated. When you're making AO2 comments, remember that you need to keep your comments about the effect on the reader. What does the writer want them to think, feel, and imagine? How has the writer used language and structure to achieve this? If you can thoroughly explore the effects on the reader, this will help maintain an analytical style which you will need for the top band. One way to mess up this question is to make generalised comments such as "to make the reader read on" or "to create an effect." These don't actually mean very much and won't get you any marks, so remember to explain the specific effect of words and phrases. The other way to make a mess of this question is not to analyse structure. If you only focus on the effects of language, you can only get 6 marks out of 15, regardless of how good your analysis is. So how do you analyse structure? Firstly, you need to be able to spot structural features and identify the effect that they have. Most readers can identify a list, a rule of 3, or repetition, but you should also be thinking about the sentence structures and the overall structure of the extract. Ideally, you should have a fairly balanced analysis of both language and structure, but it is vital that you have at least one paragraph analysing the effects of structure. It is recommended that you start with the structural analysis because people often run out of time or forget about it and they only analyse language, and this would stop you getting the higher marks in the exam. In a structure paragraph, it is essential that you use textual reference to support your structural points, but try not to write out lengthy quotations and waste your time. For example, copying every item in a list from the text is not a good use of your time. However, writing "the writer lists a number of beautiful places such as waterfalls and lakes" is a much more straightforward and simple way of doing it. It is also vital that you analyse the effect of the structural features. For example, the writer includes an extensive list of the beautiful places in Swat, including both natural features like waterfalls and the built features such as the Wali's Palace, to emphasise to the reader what a spectacular place this is, engaging the reader fully when they discover how much damage the Taliban have done to this beautiful place. The most common way students mess up their structure points is by making sweeping comments that don't really mean anything. For example, the writer uses a lot of complex sentences to engage the reader. How? You need to develop an analysis of how the complex sentences help to engage the reader. So, to recap, you must analyse both language and structure. you should aim to write at least 3 points, and you should analyse both vocabulary and sentence structures in your response. And that's all for question 3.